Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation and welcome in Budapest. I would like to thank the organizers for their invitation to this conference. On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary, I welcome the completion of this project that is fully in line with the priorities of the Hungarian V4 presidency. Supporting the Western Balkans as well as RDI cooperation have long been among our top V4 priorities. I'm also glad that the project is supported by the International Visegrad Fund, the V4 countries' primary tool to support our neighborhood, including the Western Balkans. The Hungarian presidency of the V4 chose the motto, Recharging Europe, reflecting our efforts to help the post-pandemic restart of our region and Europe. Our three main presidency priorities, so-called stability, reopening and partnership, seem more important than ever in today's turbulent times. Our presidency has been strengthening Central Europe's voice by coordination and dialogue with our neighbors in the EU and other key partners like France and UK. We also continued our practical cooperation in the area of defense, research, development and innovation, energy, climate policy, agriculture and infrastructure, especially the V4 high-speed railway network. V4+ cooperation with global partners like South Korea has also developed further. Today, together with our V4 partners, we are interested in restoring peace as soon as possible and support Ukraine as well as the refugee fleeing the war and arriving in our countries. In this situation, it is even more crucial to see European integration as a comprehensive strategic project that is necessary to ensure stability and prosperity in our continent. Europe's integration, nevertheless, cannot be complete without the Western Balkans' European accession, which is also indispensable in making the EU a strong geopolitical actor in terms of economy and security. Hungary continues to support the V4+ Western Balkans political dialogue, as well as joint efforts within the EU to speed up the enlargement process. We are advocates of dialogue with our partners in the Balkans, instead of just dialogue about the Balkans. This is why last year the V4 countries supported the inclusion of the Western Balkans in the Future of Europe debates. With the V4 countries, we lent individual and joint assistance to our Western Balkans partners, sharing our region's rich integration and reform expertise. The Visegrad Fund support is available to municipalities, universities, research and other institutions of the Western Balkans region. Under the Hungarian V4 presidency, chambers of commerce of the V4 and the Western Balkans started a fruitful discussion too. Today's event is also a contribution to practical networking that can help this comprehensive effort. Hungary is interested in fostering cooperation with the Balkans, also in the field of research, development and innovation. In particular, our goal is to boost cooperation in this region in fields like technology transfer, research, mobility education, and knowledge sharing. The V4 countries have always played a proactive role in creating a coherent innovation framework for the Western Balkans. The EU's Western Balkans agenda on innovation, research, education, culture, youth and sport offers a comprehensive roadmap to these objectives. Using our expertise as an EU member state, we can contribute to the digitalization as well as the green transition of the Western Balkans, helping the continent in the countries to meet the EU's 2050 climate and digitalization goals. As an important tool for this, Hungary's Ministry for Innovation and Technology, together with the Vienna-based Energy Community Secretariat, set up a knowledge center to help green transition in the Western Balkans back in 2019. Another relevant structure is the Extreme Light Infrastructure Project, the leading European science facility for physical sciences based on laser sources. This is an excellent example of regional RDI cooperation that involves Hungary and the Czech Republic. In the framework of scientific cooperation, ELI is open to cooperation with researchers from the Western Balkans too. Collaboration between the V4 countries in the field of research and innovation is a dynamically developing area with a significant potential to explore. By joining forces, we can raise awareness about the region's economic and research potential and support the participation of V4 countries in international and EU programs. We also have shareable expertise about successful V4+ partnerships, including research programs with Japan and Korea, innovational cooperation with Israel. I do hope to continue all these endeavors in the future, especially under the upcoming Slovak presidency from the 1st of July. And in this spirit, I would like to thank you once again for gathering here in our beautiful capital and your intention to strengthen regional partnership. Thank you very much once again, and I wish you a fruitful discussion today.
All right, so the panel starts right now and right here with very specific guests and very useful content, I hope, for all of you. I would like to invite the participants to the stage. First of all, Anja Jakovjevic, who is the head of department at the Center for Science in Serbia. Please come join us. Our next guest is Branka Savic, who is head of department at the Ministry for Scientific and Technological Development, Higher Education and Information Society in the Republic of Srpska, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Our third guest would be Dr. István Szabó, who is Vice President for Science and International Affairs, National Research Development and Innovation Office, Hungary. And our fourth panelist would be Sinisa Marcic, who is an HR expert at the Regional Cooperation Council. And finally, I'll invite Tomáš Dudas, who is Vice Dean of the Pan-European University from Slovakia, to join our merry group. So, my name is Renata Jaksa on behalf of HITFA, and let's start. You have all received questions from us before, so that's no excuse to escape the need to answer our specific requests. So first of all, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself, if you may, to say a couple of words of your background and why you think that it's interesting to share your background, your expertise here. And then I would ask the next question directly as, which fields and domains do you think your country has a comparative advantage in when it comes to the national innovation ecosystem? And do you have an idea of what the regional specificities are of the Western Balkans and of the Visegrad countries? So where do we have special strengths, special advantages? How to organize the regional cooperation structure for these regions? Thank you. Maybe we start with you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. As I was introduced, my name is Anja Jakovjevic, and I'm head of the department in Center for the Promotion of Science in Serbia. And I'm here today replacing our colleagues from the ministry who are supposed to be here and talk about smart specialization, but World Bank delegation came to Serbia, and now they're in the meetings discussing with them project, which I will say later something about. So from the perspective of the center, I will shortly present our strategies when it comes to smart specialization. So smart specialization strategy was adopted in Serbia in 2020 for a period of 7 years. Accompanying action plan was also adopted, but only for 2 years, because the idea is in the context of all these changes and all the external circumstances which are not in our command, our plan should be fit for purpose and should be adjustable to the current situation. This action plan provides 150 million euros for the period of 2 years for various activities in the realization of the smart specialization strategy. While drafting this strategy, Ministry gathered all important stakeholders to come up with a document which should fit everyone. That's at least what we are aiming to do. Trying to collect all the opinions on how we can move forward and what is the best solution for us to improve the areas which we considered are the crucial for our development. During this period, during this preparation, we had the help of Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and the strategy itself detected areas which we think have highest potential. So there are 4 vertical priorities, which is food for future in agriculture, then information and communication technologies, future machines and manufacturing system, and creative industries. There are also 2 horizontal priorities, key enabling technologies and energy efficient and eco-smart solutions. So each of these priorities has more detailed description of the topics which are within will be financed. And what is also important to know for Serbia, we are not the EU member, and therefore we don't have access to structural and cohesion funds. So that's why we have to rely on other types of financing and coming up with solutions which will help us to speed up our development. So that's for now, and other.
Hello everyone, my name is Branka Savic. I'm head of R&D and International Cooperation Department. I have been working for the last 20 years in the Ministry for Science and Technology, Higher Education and Social Information. Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republic of Srpska, innovation system is undeveloped and innovation ecosystem operates in very difficult political, social, legal and economic environments. But we are aware that we need to create more efficient ecosystem. We create a new strategy and we focused on smart specialization strategy, just like Serbia. We started work on the strategy of smart specialization, and we identified a few priority areas: information and communication technologies, creative economy, produced food, energy, and tourism. I would like to talk about comparative advantages, some example of good practice. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, for the few last years, we have developed health tourism, especially dental tourism. We have potential, we have exceptional natural potential, we have especially potential for dental tourism because we have a good geographical position. We have several airports in our country and in the neighborhood, and we have cheap and quality health dental services, and we have cheap accommodation. And we hope that we developed especially wood industry and the textile industry, because we have good advantages in textile industry, yes, and metal industry, but we don't finish our smart specialization strategies. For now.
Let's hear about the Hungarian case.
Yes, and thank you for coming to Hungary. This is the part for the tourism, actually. Actually, our office, the National Research Development and Innovation Office, is funding quite a few projects. Actually, the one which you can see that on the roll up here is funded by our office as well. So in the lower right corner, it's our office's logo. And this is, for instance, one of our initiatives through which we are trying to make sure innovation happens in Hungary as well. Well, I'm Vice President for International Relations and Science Affairs as well. And as such, I'm responsible for partially for the business sector and for the academic sector's research activities. And what we're trying to do in Hungary is twofolded. The question is quite vague, actually, but yeah, it would require more in-depth analysis. But for the purposes of this meeting, I would highlight two of our initiatives. One of them is the so-called National Laboratories initiatives. This means that in each case, in field of science, we are trying to gather the relevant Hungarian institutions around certain thematics of the national laboratories. So for instance, the already mentioned ILI is one of our national laboratories as well. And through ILI, you can have access all the relevant people who are active in laser research field in Hungary, both in terms of personnel and both in terms of research infrastructure as well. But we also have national laboratory, for instance, in quantum informatics, biotechnology, etc., etc. And in each case, the logic behind is to have a sort of one-stop shop for international partners who are willing to conduct research with Hungary. So if you come to Hungary to conduct laser research, then you can go to ILI. If you want to make quantum informatics, you go to the Visegrad Research Center, for example, and you don't have to connect with our researchers necessarily on a multilateral basis, but it's much more efficient and visible from the outside. To have this one-stop shop concept. And for the business sector, the answer will be pretty much similar than to the previous colleagues. The smart specialization strategy is not by surprise. Actually, it's the European Union that put this practice in front of the states as I would say, obligatory practice that you should be able to identify your comparative advantages. And in each case, we identified pretty much the similar priorities what I heard. I think it would be interesting, however, from an analyst side to make a comparison between each country's prioritization list, because I'm pretty sure that everybody went like a good horse, you know, with this eye. I don't know how they call it in English, so you don't look to the other countries. You just do your prioritization and don't necessarily take into account what happens in the neighborhood. But let's hope that this event might shed some light on it, what the others are trying to do and what could be the potential mutual benefits to put together, for instance, our prioritization in ICT, for instance. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's hear the point of view from the Regional Cooperation Council.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I represent Regional Cooperation Council. It's a political organization basically designed to assist Southeast European countries that haven't joined the European Union. So our main focus is now on the Western Balkans. I'm pretty much in charge of innovation and research policies and ecosystem in the Western Balkans, so I'd like to say a few words about that. When it comes to both innovation and research, unfortunately, Western Balkan ecosystem is lagging behind, even behind Visegrad countries, let alone more developed Western economies. Overall, expenditures on research and innovation are relatively low compared to the EU average. They range between 0.9 in Serbia, for example, to just 0.1% in Albania and Kosovo. So you can imagine how difficult it is to develop individual innovation and research ecosystems, let alone a regional innovation ecosystem. Our main focus in the next 4 to 5 years will be to really support developments of the regional innovation ecosystem in the Western Balkans. We are just about to publish the first regional innovation and research infrastructures roadmap that for the first time identified are key priorities and key advantages that we should rely in the future. And as my predecessors mentioned, many of these priorities happen to be rather similar. As a horizontal priority, I believe digitalization is the first one, so information and communication technologies. But then we also have food production, in particular healthy organic food, metal processing, automotive industry, creative industries, but also tourism as one of the all-encompassing sectors that have major economic potential in the Western Balkans. We have been trying over the last couple of years to integrate as much as possible this ecosystem. And I know here in the audience we have representatives of some international or European agencies such as European Institute of Innovation and Technologies that have been trying to upscale the operations in the Western Balkans to assist the economies in this region catch up with the European member states. We've been also closely working with other organizations such as Eureka Network, Cost Association, Enterprise Europe Network, GEANT, etc., to make the most of the opportunities they can offer. However, one has to understand that this is much easier said than done. Because of versatile ecosystems in each of these 6 economies, I can say that Serbia is probably the most developed ecosystem thanks to the fact that Belgrade is in Serbia, which is kind of the key hub in this part of Europe, but also traditions, infrastructures from the past, etc. Whereas some other economies are really having major difficulties, major challenges to catch up. However, the COVID situation proved that investments into research and innovation are really worthwhile, and I believe even the policymakers are starting to understand this. This wasn't the case in the previous period, and more we are seeing initiatives that may bring major added benefits to both research and innovation communities in the Western Balkans. I can say a few words later on in the discussions, but for the start, I guess that should suffice. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. So, Tomasz, we are turning to you now.
Thank you very much. Maybe you met me yesterday. I had a presentation. I am from the Pan-European University. I'm dean of one of the faculties, and I'm an economist by trade. And I'm at universities for more than 20 years. So I've seen a lot during those days. And when I was thinking about this question, the basic thing that I think we all know that here in Central Europe, in Western Balkans, we have to compete with less funding, and we have less experience compared to our colleagues in Western Europe or in the US and other countries. So it's harder to be competitive. And as for smaller countries like Slovakia, is one of the smaller countries in the EU and in the region. It's very important to identify which areas you cannot compete in all areas. As we heard that also other countries are doing this, and I think that we lag behind a little bit with this in Slovakia, but the next Gen EU fund could be a turning point. Also for Slovakia, as a lot of funding is coming into research and innovation with the similar key areas like digitalization, green technologies and stuff. And maybe what is important that the Ministry of Education is trying to single out the successful units, not only because before this the accreditation and the scientific evaluation was done mostly on the level of universities or faculties, and now they would like to try to single out smaller units, that who are those who are doing the excellent top research in the country, and and those units then will get more funding probably, hopefully. And so this could be a step in the right direction, I think, we will see how it will work out.
Well, thank you so much. Our next question would be that All right, after you've set your smart specialization strategies and you do know what are your strengths and advantages, what do you consider to be the most useful tools and instruments to carry those plans through, carry those strategies through? So what is most useful in terms of financial or human capacities, instruments in realizing those strategies in innovation?
Well, in Serbia, we have a few institutions which financially support this kind of projects. One of them is Innovation Fund, which supports innovative activities of the companies in different stages of their development. The idea is to strengthen the economy through science. The other institution is Science Fund, which is a relatively young institution. And this institution supports scientific research with the focus of motivating researchers to connect with the market and the requirements of the economy. And so far they had 5 calls for different projects, and we increased capacity. Recently, for example, the government approved more working places for this fund in order to strengthen, because the amount of work is increasing for each call, which means that the interest of the scientific community is increasing. Also, we have Center for the Promotion of Science, from which I'm coming, and of course we don't provide large-scale funds like these 2 institutions, but in a certain way we are trying to connect the society, and we have this call in which we connect scientific clubs which are spread around Serbia with the goals that we said they are writing projects to bring closer science to the people. We are also in the project of preparing framework for the citizen science, and we are hoping that next year we will get funds from the state, because all these 3 institutions are under the ministry, which provides funds for these institutions. Also, we have a large project which is called Serbia Accelerating Innovation and Growth Entrepreneurship, which is developed with cooperation with the World Bank and European Commission via IPA funds. So we are now this project is ongoing, and the idea of this project is to connect everybody and to come up with a strategy which will make sure that all these goals that we have set are fulfilled on time and in the best interest of our country.
Thank you.
In Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republic of Srpska, the most important instrument will be a smart specialization strategy. Also, in the new strategy, we focused on establishment of Science and Innovation Fund and a Science and Technological Park. We at the start, but you must know that we have the trend of low investment in R&D. According to the last official statistical data, investment in R&D amounted 0.2 of GDP. And we hope that absorption of EU funds will be increasing. And we have many problems, but we hope that we are on the right way. And that's all for me.
Thank you very much. In Hungary, we are a bit more like a situation, maybe regarding, at least in terms of R&D spending, because we spend 1.6% of GDP for R&D. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that cooperations happen. Because you can have all the money, but it's important to have some sustainable innovation system in place, actually. And we have used one of the tools for the smart specialization here. It has a key component which is called the entrepreneur discovery process. And this means that basically the smart specialization strategy was worked together with the business sector players and the stakeholders. And in each case, you have to have a constant feedback from them if that strategy is still in place. So this means that you have to adjust sometimes the priorities list to their needs to make sure that the comparative advantages will be in place actually, and they understand that there is an inherent part of the strategy that basically enables them to have again sustainable innovation happening, and this is a key component for the smart specialization strategy. And to enhance the cooperations, we have formed the system of regional innovation platforms as well. These are formed around Hungarian universities in each case, because in Hungary we basically have an even distribution of universities all around the country, and this means that around the universities there are certain innovation hubs, virtual networks of business enterprises and academic sector players. These are not dedicated to priorities. The main point here is to have innovation networks of those actors who are willing to do innovation actually. And also in terms of science, for instance, we are trying to make sure that open science will be a thing in Hungary, I would say, so that the academic sector will have much intense discussion with the private sector players, and also actually in between the academic sector players, because it's not always obvious that, for instance, you are allowed to use an instrument that is in the next room because it belongs to another professor. And we also have, of course, the funding instruments in place. So we also have a research and innovation fund that and we will also have EU funds, and we will have the Horizon Europe funds as well. But although I'm coming from a funding agency, I firmly believe that funding is just a secondary instrument, and the most important is to make sure that innovation happens because the actors want to innovate, and funding is just a nice thing to have, but it's more important that they should want to do it.
Thank you. Thank you. Sinisa?
Well, to follow up what Professor just mentioned, I also believe the funding is very important, but it's not the most important element to develop an innovation ecosystem. When it comes to the Western Balkans, our colleagues from Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republika Srpska mentioned some developments in these two economies. When it comes to other four economies, let me just say that apart from Serbia, the only economy that already prepared and started implementing smart specialization strategy is Montenegro. North Macedonia and Albania are following suit. They are currently in the process of entrepreneurial discovery process. And if everything goes okay, they should have their strategies in place by the end of this year or beginning of next year. With regards to Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's slightly difficult because of the political climate and quite tense political developments over the last several years. When it comes to instruments that are in place, again, we see a very versatile image. Our colleague mentioned that in Serbia, Innovation Fund has been in place for about a decade or so. The Science Fund of the Republic of Serbia has been established 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And this is, in a way, the most advanced economy. Only North Macedonia also has the Innovation Fund, and that's been extremely agile and very dynamic instrument for the last 3 to 4 years. Other economies are really trying to follow suit, but it's extremely difficult if, on one hand, you have very limited funds, on the other hand, you have very limited understanding on behalf of the policymakers who fail to understand that innovation and research are actually one of the most important investments in society. But some other economies are also trying to introduce other elements, and this is the public side of the story. Then there's a private side of the story, which is far more dynamic than in all Western Balkan economies. You've seen over the last, I'd say, 5 years, a kind of flourishing of various innovation hubs, accelerators, science technology parks in Serbia. We have 4 of them there. So Montenegro and in North Macedonia are trying to establish one in Banja Luka University as well. The private investors, the private entrepreneurs have come to realize that they have to rely on themselves rather than rely on public funds, because in most cases they won't get them. As simple as that. And that's why this part of the story is far, far more interesting. We have seen so many positive stories around the region. Again, Serbia is the front runner. Let me just illustrate, last year only 2 or 3 companies have been either acquired or have been sold to international major companies such as Nordeus, a gaming company from Belgrade, Frame, a company from Niš, Trilateral from Novi Sad, etc., which proved, and we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, that prove that things can happen in the region. We are also seeing an emergence of several companies that within a year or 2 will most likely become the first region's unicorns. Again, this proves that things can develop. And this is in particularly important when you match or couple the public funds plus private investors' interests and the interest of international organizations such as the World Bank, some European agencies, European Innovation Council, EDIF instrument. Also, we're talking, I'm looking here at Luke, who will be talking later about the EIT. Many of these instruments offer a number of opportunities. Unfortunately, for us, many of these opportunities go unnoticed, and very few, both companies and research organizations, learn about them or learn when it's too late. And this is one of the reasons why we try to go a step further or step ahead to inform as many of our partners around the region that these opportunities actually exist and that they can, bandwagon and make the most of them if they wish, of course. You can't force people. You will recall Sean's presentation yesterday. He mentioned at some point that 85% of researchers simply don't care. No matter where they are, they don't care. So our focus should be on those excellent researchers. I like to call them isolated islands of excellence, who happen to thrive in all environments, I guess in Slovakia, in Hungary, in any of the countries represented here in the room. What we need to do, both as policymakers or organizations such as mine, whose missions are really to facilitate the processes, is to find ways to connect them into something I prefer to call a kind of archipelago of scientific and innovation excellence. When you have an archipelago, you can't be ignored. And that's the key thing. When a policymaker comes on this stage and looks in this audience and looks at smart people who have achievements behind them, they can't just ignore you. And that's the key thing. And I believe this network of yours is actually a very, very good example. It proves that a dynamic, a passionate group of people can go an extra mile and push those boundaries further, so policymakers can actually, or have to, do something about it. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we in Slovakia also call these the isolated islands of excellence. So I agree that funding is just one piece of the puzzle to create an ecosystem, but well, it's an important, especially if you have low fundings. So in Slovakia, if we are mentioning numbers, I think we have the lowest innovation outlays as a part of GDP. I think we have 0.9%, which is compared to Hungary 1.6. Czech Republic is 1.8 or something like that, or even more, 2%. So the private spending, the corporations spend also less on R&D, and the public spending is also lower. So the university researchers or the Slovak Academy of Sciences feels that the funding is really a problem, especially the universities the public universities face, I think, the third year when the total budget of the universities has been cut year by year by year. So then, of course, if a policymaker comes and says that innovation and the knowledge society is one of our main priorities, it's really hard to believe in it. But I already have to echo the argument that the COVID did a good thing that brought science forward, also in Slovakia. We had, for example, one company that was one of the first biotech companies to create PCR tests. And the founder of this company got a lot of attention in the media as one of the main experts. And yeah, that was a good thing to show the general public that really science helps, science works. So if you fund researchers, you will get results, which will be good for everyone, for the whole country, for the whole society. And maybe from other positive things that happened, that one of the most innovative companies in Slovakia, or maybe the most innovative, maybe no asset, which is a computer security company, which is one of the key players in international scale, introduced an award for the best researchers in the country, and they managed to get a lot of media time. So people can know that who are those people, the best researcher, the best young researcher, and what they do, and how they contribute, because then the pressure can build that give funds to the researchers, and yeah, the whole society will benefit from it. And another positive thing that happened is that after many years of delays, the transformation of the Slovak Academy of Sciences was completed, or is nearing completion, which will enable them to cooperate with the private sector more easily and get into this kind of cooperation, because there's a lot of brain power in some of the institutes, especially natural sciences, biophysics, physics, and so on. So there is a lot of hope in it that this will also accelerate innovation.
Well, thank you so much. We have been talking about the funding, we've been talking about the networking, the need to do the research itself. So we are circling in to the topic of the research managers and administrators. So our next question is that how do you see their role in your national ecosystems? And I would like to also ask you to reflect on the special case of the non-EU countries that they have, to some extent, smaller access to the EU funds. So how you have mentioned already that the business plays a bigger role in funding innovation. So do you also see the RMAs taking a job and doing work in the business sector, not only the higher education and the academia, or would it be still a more typical job position at a university to be an RMA than in the business? So what's your perspective on that?
Well, experience showed us that research managers are a very important wheel in implementing projects, at least in Serbia. And 7 years ago, Center for the Promotion of Science recognized this importance. And we organized, actually, together with Maria Center, organized training for the research managers, which lasted for 3 months. And then we were learning about programs at that moment, Horizon 2020, Erasmus+, Creative Europe. And that knowledge actually connected people in Serbia who were scattered at that moment, and that training connected people. And now these days it's very easier if you have this network, so you can communicate with them, you can consult with other colleagues. And yesterday my colleagues had the presentation of challenges which we are facing. And on this level also trainings and conferences are important, because we can then learn from other experiences and to see how to find a solution for our particular situation in our specific legal rules in our country. Your question about the working for the companies. I also think that, yeah, in Serbia there are people who are working for the companies, managing projects, not only in the academia, because as it was mentioned before, the companies are going stronger. So we hope in the future that it will be, yeah, more spread in that area as well. So yeah, I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
In Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republic of Srpska, there are no research managers and administrators association. We recognize the importance of this profession, but we must identify mapping research managers and administrators. I think that there are a small number in my country of this profession, but ministry have some programs, and through our programs we help research managers and administrators. For example, at the University of Banja Luka, we have an EU Access Center, and we help them through public calls, and I think they survive by our help.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have two major initiatives regarding research management. One of them is the so-called University Innovation Ecosystem Program, which means that each university should have, again, with the logic of this one-stop shop I mentioned at the national laboratories, a single point of access for other entities outside the university, namely the business sector players actually, so that they can somehow provide innovation services to the economy. And this is, again, in line with the concept of the regional innovation platforms. So this means that the platform players should contact this innovation ecosystem contact point at the university and don't have to find somebody at a huge university like this, for instance, to connect to, but they rather have a person in place. What we also did in individual level, that some 2 years ago we have introduced a dedicated university course for innovation managers. It is a one-year course. And it basically enables those who participate to have a graduation actually, and having them as innovation managers on board. I think it's a very good course because I'm teaching there as well. But anyways, it's important to motivate and to somehow move the community, move the innovation community in a way. And in terms of business expenditure for innovation, what we see in Hungary that luckily, for instance, in the R&D spending, the business sector is getting a bigger and bigger part. So a major part of our increase on R&D spending is coming from the business sector players, actually. And this is very much in line with the Hungarian policy on R&D, where we are eager to bring the R&D activities of foreign companies to Hungary, so that the added value of Hungarian entities can be bigger.
Yeah, again, when it comes to the Western Balkans, I can share a few positive developments. For example, the European Commission recently shared a report on achievements of the Western Balkans in Horizon Europe. It shows that the region really did well. It actually outperformed some of the European Union's member states. In a way, when you look at percentages, however, the uptake of money from European funds is still rather modest. And this is understandable since we are not members of the European Union and we don't have access to European funds, other European funds. However, this proves that research and innovation community is in a way thriving, at least this dynamic part of this community. And this is something to really be acknowledged. Recently, last year, the European Union also opened a so-called ring-fenced call for the Western Balkans on twinning. And they were worried that they won't receive enough applications from the region. What happened is that they had some difficulties going through so many applications, which proves that there is the need and there is the understanding, at least of this dynamic part of the community, that European funds can actually be very, very powerful instruments that can assist development in our region. And this is something to be reinforced. When it comes to research managers in the Western Balkans, that obviously is not a recognized profession. I believe similar to researchers and innovators, research managers, administrators are also kind of separate species. And again, most of these people happen to be very isolated islands of excellence. I can share one example from the University of Banja Luka. When Branka comes, we have two participants here in the audience. I won't name them because they'll be flushing, but I can say that these two individuals are worth hundreds of researchers when it comes to preparations of project applications and everything related to that. And so some of you obviously are turning heads, you know who I'm talking about. And this is something that really needs to be encouraged. Last year, the Regional Cooperation Council designed a program, for example, to assist national contact points in research innovation, learn more about the existing opportunities with Horizon Europe, EIT, Eureka, etc. And it's amazing to learn that most of these people, most of them, frankly speaking, are newly appointed, have very limited knowledge about the existing opportunities. And these are the people who are there to assist researchers, companies, innovators, suck in the European funds. So you can imagine how difficult it is for someone who is not into this European Brussels type of language to understand what's behind it, as Sean talked about policies behind it. People simply don't understand, why do I need to do this? Why cancer, for example, is one of the priorities under Horizon Europe right now? And why should I do whatever? And if I understand, then there's another question that comes in the way, which is, how can I do this? And this is where research managers and administrators have, I believe, the most important, the critically important role to play. They can decipher for researchers what is this language that's coming from Brussels, explain them in a simple way what that actually means, and then help researchers translate their research ideas, very complex ones, into something that's understandable to EU bureaucrats. So I believe you guys here in the room are the key, connection. You are the bridge between the funds, 90 billion euros out there, and researchers who happen to be lost, confused, who can't understand this language, who can actually contribute, who can do good research projects and innovative projects, but don't know what to do next. So I believe what you do is really important and should be promoted in the Western Balkans at least. But I guess it's the same case in Visegrad countries, because we are like 10 years behind you, and you are in some ways like 5 years behind the initial entrance to the European Union.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was very, very well said. Yeah, if I look at Slovakia and I looked up the data of Horizon 2020, Slovakia was one of the last countries in the whole European Union. Like, we were in 25th place from 28 countries as grant money received from Horizon 2020. So, yeah, the money is there, the billions are there, but it's a problem. And I completely agree that the research managers play a very, very important role. And you can see it also at the Slovak universities, that those universities who recognize this already and funded and established well-working project offices like the Technical University in Bratislava, where my colleague Martin works, have results, and also some other universities. And those who hadn't, then they don't. And I happen to work at a faculty at the University of Economics in Bratislava, which was a partner in one of the Horizon 2020 projects. And I saw the lack of support. Colleagues were doing everything by themselves. I mean, the researchers. So this is not how it's supposed to be. And yeah, that's not the way to do it. And because it can lead to isolated results, but if you want to have consistently good results and be successful, as we yesterday heard from Sean, you need really a strong support from administration.
Well, thank you so much. So we've heard so many things, and I think that we would be willing to hear more, but time is running out. So we have arrived to our last question, and if it would be possible, we should start from this end of the row, just for a change. And the last question is very simple, but very complex at the same time. So what do you think is the biggest challenge for your national innovation ecosystem in the upcoming 1, 2, 5, 10 years? There's so much turmoil going on. There are so many economic and geopolitical challenges. There are so many environmental factors to count with. So when it comes to your specific regional specialization strategy, what represents the biggest challenge? So if we could just narrow it down to 1 or 2 challenges very shortly. Thanks.
Well, yeah, if you follow the news, not a lot of good news lately, unfortunately, in the world, but on the positive side of things, in Slovakia, I would say that the key challenge will be to use the next-gen EU funds, because there's a lot of funding available, and not just use them, but use them effectively, and that it should bring sustainable, for example, ecosystem for innovation. And yeah, and the other thing is that we have a lot of work to do on the innovation ecosystem to bring together people and enable them to be competitive.
Well, I believe we're going to face many challenges. Food crisis, energy crisis, potential armed conflicts, etc. And all this will somehow spill over to all fields of life, including research and innovation. I'd say that most people would immediately point out to research funding or funding in general as one of the key problems. In the Western Balkans, another issue is the brain drain, enormous brain drain we are confronting basically on a daily basis. But I believe that's not the key challenge. I believe the key challenge for most of us in international organizations, research organizations, innovators, businesses, and mainly policymakers, politicians, is awareness raising. We need to embark on the same boat. We need to convince everyone in the room, for example, that this is the way to go. This is, and let me use this term, research innovation is not a sexy field. It does not bring quick wins. You need to invest for years and years. You need to experiment, you need to risk, you need to be able to confront failure until you identify something that actually works. And as Professor mentioned, I'm a big fan of niche markets. We cannot compete with Volkswagen in automotive industry. Why? Because they have tradition, billions, German state behind them, blah, blah. What we can do is identify where we can shine and where we can outperform others. And these are very small, tiny niches nobody really cares about. But for economies such as ours that are already small and relatively poor compared to the Western Union members, this is more than enough. We can build on these niche developments, we can profit out of them, and we can create innovation, but generally ecosystems that thrive and that can encourage many, in particular young people, to turn to entrepreneurship. This is what we need. We need people who understand the trends, who know what's coming in 5, 10 years' time, and who can get ready now. And this is why we need this mind shift. It's not about funding. Money is everywhere. You can find money. Good ideas that can be pitched among investors will always find a way to get funding. What we need is a mind shift that we can be the change agents. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, yes, I think that the biggest challenge is, and since we are at the university, let's take maybe 10 seconds of lecture. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you are all aware of the so-called middle income trap. But if you translate this to the middle development trap, then it's quite obvious that what will be a key problem actually for the whole Central Eastern Europe region. So the main issue or the main danger is that we are doing some research, we are doing some innovation, but not enough basically to make sure that these niche activities can have an impact on international level and that it can have an impact on a European wide level. And to be very honest, while we are talking about the framework programs in research and development, the Horizon Europe is maybe the 9th, I guess, but now it has, of course, a nice label, Horizon Europe, and the 8th for the Horizon 2020. But these are going on since the 6th framework program, at least in Europe. And Hungary is doing very well in these framework programs. And we are doing very well means that we managed to get 0.65% of the Horizon 2020 funds, and all Central Eastern Europe, so basically all countries east to the former Iron Curtain, managed to get about 5% of these funds. And I doubt that this would show the real distribution of intellectual and research capacities within Europe. But in each case, this is the current situation. Obviously, Germany is the biggest country who won in the framework programs. But somehow we have to be able to cooperate together within our countries and within the countries with each other as well, so that we somehow cooperate in these niche areas and make sure that, again, critical masses happen so that we can avoid this middle development trap.
Thank you.
In Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republic of Srpska, we faced with many challenges and obstacles. Beside financial problems, we have a brain drain every day. From Bosnia and Herzegovina leave many educated and qualified people. Establish a new program in the ministry, I forgot to mention, and I think that is very important, a synergy between academic community and economy, business, private business company. And but we hoped that success maybe comes the better days for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I have to agree that the brain drain I see as the biggest problem, especially in Serbia, because we can have the most advantageous machines, but we still need someone who understands how they operate and what they do. So brain drain is, I think, in Balkan region, the biggest problem. And actually, Serbia is taking some steps to kind of prevent that or to give opportunities to people who already left to come back. But I think that there is still lots of room to be done in that sense in Serbia, because we really need these people with knowledge and open-minded people with expertise. And as previous speakers said, it's a process. And of course, in that process, we all need patience. But I think that patience is these days not the popular quality. So I think that's actually the biggest challenge for us.
Well, thank you so much for all these insights and the knowledge that you have shared. And I don't think that we have time to properly wrap it up at the moment, but I would like to point out two key messages that do resonate, I think, with us. The first of all is that all these countries, they do have their strengths and their specialities, but maybe some further room is there to cooperate and harmonize who is good at what kind of questions. And the second is that this very special animal, the RMA, who is the translator and the key machine in connecting the policy with the practical researchers. So we have to make sure that they do have the room, they do have the training, they do have the young upcoming RMA to like counteract the brain drain in these countries. So let's make sure that they do receive the proper attention. Well, thank you so much for participating in the panel. Thank you.